welcome back for another 7 Caillou challenge. This one's called Boiled Eggs. You are the greatest chef on earth. No one boils eggs like you. Your restaurant is always full of guests who love your boiled eggs. But when there is a greater order of boiled eggs, you need some time because you only have one pot for your job. How much time do you need? You are to implement a function which takes a non-negative integer representing the number of eggs to boil. It must return the time in minutes, an integer, which it takes to have all the eggs boiled. Here are the rules. You can put at most 8 eggs into the pot at once. It takes 5 minutes to boil an egg. We assume that the water is boiling all the time, so you don't have to worry about the time it takes to heat the water up. And also for simplicity, we don't consider the time it takes to put eggs into the pot and remove them from it. So consider the few examples that they offer. If you have 0 eggs, obviously that doesn't take any cooking time. If you have 5, you have that 5-minute time that it takes to boil an egg, and because 5 is less than 8, you can fit it all into the pot at once and have one sort of batch that's done in 5 minutes. Note that for 10, because that's greater than 8, right, you can boil the first 8 in 5 minutes, but then you've got 2 eggs left over and you need another 5 minutes to finish those, to boil those. So 5 plus 5 is 10, and that's why it returns 10. So I think that's straightforward. Go ahead and pause this. You can definitely do this one, and then come on back when you're ready. I'm going to start by addressing the edge case. I'll say if eggs is less than or equal to 0, return 0. That's not valid input, right? We're not going to even bother calculating a cook time for no eggs or a value that doesn't even make sense. So for the rest of this, I did my usual kind of create some constants that describe some of these values set in the rules. Static read only. I'm going to make these constant ints, and I'll call it, how about max capacity? And this would talk about how many eggs fit in a pot. Right? Okay. And I'm going to make another one to describe that cooking time. Let's call that time to boil, and that will be 5, right? That's what it said. And we'll make a comment here in minutes. I like to, whenever I use values, I like to denote their units of measurement. So there we go. We have, that's the necessary bit of information. We don't have to use magic numbers. If you come back to this program later, let's say you bought a bigger pot that could now hold 12 eggs, well, you just update that here and your whole program will still work. So that's why I do this. It seems like overkill here, but that's why I do it. Then to figure this problem out, right? So we basically have 5 minutes per 8 eggs, right? If we could simplify this down, for every 8 eggs, I need 5 minutes. And even if it spills over by 1, so consider I have 9 eggs and I can do 8 up front, and then I got that 1 egg that I gotta give the whole pot in 5 minutes to boil it as well. So for that reason, I'm essentially going to divide the number of eggs by the capacity, right? To get a batch size, I'm going to kind of think of this in batches. And I'm going to get the number of batches and multiply it by the time to boil, and that should have the total cook time, right? So if I had 4 batches I had to do, it takes 5 minutes per batch, and you know it's going to be 20 minutes. So let's do that. To get that, let's take eggs divided by the max capacity, right? And now think of this. This is integer division, right? So we know that when we divide integers, by default, if we don't do anything, it's going to truncate. So it comes out to be 4.5, it's just going to return the number 4. If it's 4.9999, it's just going to return 4. It's just going to drop that whole fractional part. So in our case, though, we talked about if you have any extra, that one extra egg in the 9 example, we need another batch. So what I'm going to do here is take that integer division and just round it up like it's another complete batch. So to do that, I think we've seen the math has a ceiling function that will unconditionally round up. If the division were 4.000001, it would still round up to 5. That's how that works. And conversely, there's a floor function that will do the opposite. It'll round down, kind of like how the integer division just truncates the fractional part. It just kind of discards it. So we've got math ceiling is the number of eggs divided by the capacity. So think of that 9 eggs divided by 8 here, right? You're going to get 1 1/8 as a result. It's a little bit over 1, so this is going to actually round up to 2, which is what we want. We want 2 times 5 minutes. It's going to give us that 10 value that we need, which would also apply to the number 9 if it were listed there. So that's good, and we're going to multiply that by our time to boil, right? You know what, I can... Ceiling is going to return a double, so if you want, we can do it like this, a little more clear. We can say int num batches equals the math ceiling, right? And then I'll use this C style cast to make it an int because I'm declaring the number of batches as an integer, right? The number of batches is an integer value. We don't do 2.5 batches. So that makes sense, and I'll just convert the result to an integer. Then once you have the number of batches, you can say return num batches times time to boil. And if you're comfortable and want to do it all on one line, go ahead like I had started doing before, but maybe this will be more clear. So yeah, once we have the batches right, round it up. Let's try it, see what we did. You know what, one thing, I keep getting yelled at for this. It's funny how when you're coding, you kind of repeat what you do. You get into bad habits and then you keep doing it. So I keep forgetting to add using system. I need that for the math class, right? I didn't define the math class in here. Okay, the call is ambiguous. So it looks like the math ceiling function has 2 different overloads. There's one where you can pass it a decimal type, and there's one where you can pass it a double type. And so it's kind of complaining like, hey buddy, which ceiling are you trying to call? I don't know that I really care, but I'll just say double here. And when you convert one of the arguments to a double, now that division sees a double and an integer, and it will perform double division. So that's why I only need to do one of them. I don't have to cast max capacity to a double either. I could have done it there instead. So let's try now, see if it's happy. It knows which ceiling function to use. It looks like it is. I'll hit the attempt. And we're ready to submit. So yeah, not too bad, right? Maybe you didn't go to the trouble to expand this. I'm probably the only guy who did that. When we go to submit, you know, people are gonna cram this all into one line. And again, everything for num batches, you could just cut and paste right here, right? But it's, you know, it's not always as readable. Like, it's really clear. People understand right away what I'm trying to do, what I'm saying. It's really expressive. It reads almost like how we talk, you know, and you start putting a bunch of these all together and, you know, it can be a little less clear. So that's bad. Or I'm sorry, that's a good thing. And it's not bad that we used one extra line. I mean, the function's still only 5 lines long. That's plenty fair in my opinion. So I'll go ahead and submit to get the points, and we'll see what other people did. I'm sure there are some very short answers, concise. Math ceiling, yeah, that's pretty much what we did, right? They just crammed it all on one line. 8D must say to interpret the value as a double. You'll see 8F for a float type, so that's a shorthand from this C style cast that we used and that they used on this side. For 8x5, so yeah, a lot of the same things. Did a loop there, that's overkill, but it works. And so yeah, feel free to continue looking through those to see if any of that is helpful. You know where to find me with questions. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.